Hey guys, today we are putting a Tekonsha part number 22119. This is the 22119 custom wiring harness for the Toyota Highlander. Now this is a 2019. You'll need to check to see what year model range that particular harness encompasses, but this is a 2019 Toyota Highlander XLE with third row seating that we're working on today. This harness is the Tekonsha provided harness that snaps into the Toyota provided connector at the back under the rear threshold, incorporates the power module, allows you to ground it to a chassis ground, gives you a reverse light wire if you have a trailer that needs reverse lights, or possibly a boat trailer where you need a reverse lockout solenoid to be powered when you put the vehicle in reverse. And then they give you the wiring leads to go along the factory wire all the way along the thresholds up through the firewall to the battery for your 12-volt power circuit. And then they also supply a Tekonsha brake control harness that can be snapped into the brake control, which we will be mounting to this area here on the dash, and the wires will tie in with the wiring harness when it comes back here. First of all, this was a great attempt by Tekonsha to get a harness that's customized for this vehicle, but they've got some serious issues that you need to be aware of before you attempt this. First of all, where the actual grommet goes through the floorboard right here, that grommet hole where you take the old grommet out and put the new grommet in for this wiring harness, we had to enlarge that hole using a step bit to the maximum diameter of this step bit, which you can see is 1 3/8 inches. The factory hole was too small for the grommet that Tekonsha provides on the wiring harness. So you'll have to drill that out. Why Tekonsha doesn't utilize the same footprint as the grommet that came out is beyond me, but that would obviously be a huge plus if they would just use the correct size grommet. Furthermore, in order for the end of this harness, that you can see me pulling out of that hole, in order for that harness to reach where we're going to be mounting the 7-way plug on the Horizon Global brands of hitches, this case a draw tight, some of the others like Reese Hidden Hitch would be the same footprint, but in order for us to get this all the way down to where it can reach, excuse the camera work, I'm trying to do this at the same time. One of these days I'll have somebody hold the camera for me. But there you can see me coming through the hole and coming up behind the hitch, and then this will come down just enough so that those ends will be at the back of where the plug is right here. In order for me to have that length, I had to cut their existing grommet free from this harness and move it up the harness a whole foot. Because if you would try to put it in where they had it tied off at the Y, your lead would not be long enough to reach the bracket. So you have to cut the harness. This is the second harness that I've had to do this on too, by the way. So the first time I ran it, this was not a one-off, and this is not a one-off. It's consistent. That grommet is the wrong size. It's too big, so you got to drill out the hole. You'll have to cut the black tape off and peel the wiring covers off the wiring and shift that grommet a foot closer to this power box to give you the length that you need to reach the 7-way mounting bracket at the bottom. And then you'll notice that they show in the instructions that the wires are not attached to the connector. You're supposed to hook those up and then put the thing in. They give you the color code. But when it comes in the kit, they already had it set up into this. Well, when those wires are clipped into this big connector will not fit down through that hole. So you're going to have the proper tools to disengage the pins and pull all of these little guys right here out of the connector so that you can get this wire down through that hole and then reattach said connector on the end so that you can snap the 7-way into. Very poor setup. If you're going to have it this way to get through the hole, then leave it that way in the box, Tekonsha. they put it on, so we had to turn around and take it off. The length was wrong, the grommet was wrong, and if you're going to make a custom harness, why not go ahead and make this ground wire long enough that when it comes up the side of here, which is where we're going to run this wire to the front, you could come along here and down to that factory chassis ground. But you can't just go across from there to there, because then there won't be room for the center, for the panel to go back in. That ground wire needs to be long enough to reach up and around and ground it to the chassis ground. So there are some challenges with this 22119 harness. The back here, you'll have to fidget with it to make it work and to fit correctly. That takes extra time. It took me an extra 25 minutes to deal with all of that. Something to be aware of. Also, too, if you want a nice clean run to the battery, then obviously we come inside the trim panels along the front, and then we come up through the firewall. Now, the grommet that Toyota provides on the firewall has a little nub on it that you can snip off and you can put the wire through. Getting to that grommet is a nightmare. For us to get to it easily, we took the air breather out of the vehicle. We took the breather box, the filter, and the intake, as well as the hose here. You can see it all laying in the floor there in the customer's garage. And this gives us enough room to get up in behind back there where that grommet is at. But then also to get a good wire pull and to find the grommet hole on the firewall, we found it very helpful to go ahead and unsnap this panel and take several of the screws that hold this wiring apparatus free from the top, and then that allowed us to move it around enough to get back up under there and get through the grommet. So a lot of panel removal, a lot of component removal, but it can be done. It can be done nicely. It's once you get it all set up, it'll be an excellent setup. But my gosh, an awful lot of extra work that Tekonsha has created just by having the back end of this wrong. If they'd have the right size grommet, if the Y would be positioned where you had enough length to get from that grommet hole to the plug, and if they would not have put the connector end on the end of it because it won't fit through. Just some little things like that would have been the longer ground wire. So just some things to be aware of if you decide to utilize that harness in your Highlander.